Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Freethinker Cast. I'm Hannah, and in today's episode we are doing the episode 3 review of Harry and Meghan, or their docu-series. It dropped Thursday last week. This is the last one that we have available to us on Netflix. Another 3 are going to drop tomorrow, so if you don't want to miss my review for that, make sure your post notifications are on, make sure you're subscribed to this channel, and make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. I'm going to try and slow down a little bit because I've been told that I speak way too quickly. I can't control it. Whenever I'm really excited, enthusiastic, and have so much to let you guys know, it just kind of flows out quite seamlessly. And obviously after you've done this for a while, you develop a certain proficiency in speaking because you're always speaking and thinking because we're free thinkers. Woo. I must point out that I'm so grateful for the free thinkers in the comment section that pointed out to me that it's actually Thomas Markle, her father, Meghan Markle's father, that raised her. It was mainly him who raised her. I thought it was her mother, but it would explain why she was so upset with the Procter & Gamble commercial where they were having women washing up the dishes, and she had to write a whole letter to the president of Procter & Gamble. Why are women in this? Because she probably saw her father doing all of those things. She has a disdain for tradition. She wasn't grown up within tradition. She never had respect for it. Therefore, it doesn't surprise me why she doesn't want to curtsy. She doesn't understand tradition. The world must revolve around the minority. The world must revolve around the rare exceptions that didn't grow up in typical nuclear family structures. And it also, for her, provides a justification for why she shouldn't have to curtsy. Because that was not my tradition. That's not how I grew up. I'm going to write a letter to the Queen of England and say why we shouldn't curtsy. Anyways, thank you free thinkers in the comment section. You be calling me out. You be thinking even more than I'm thinking. Purr. So this episode 3 talks a lot about colonialism. It talks a lot about the British Empire attempting to defame Britain, trying to make Britain look evil and racist, like so evil and racist, except they're all using historical examples. These are very valid criticisms, except they're completely and utterly outdated. We do not have the same situation in Britain today that we did during the peak of the British Empire. Of course, the British Empire had its problems, or I say problems, it was responsible for slavery. Okay, problems is so remiss. It was responsible for a lot of murder and enslavement, but it was also responsible for abolishing that murder and enslavement. I mean, slavery in Africa still continues today. There's more people in modern slavery than there were ever during the peak of the transatlantic slave trade. Britain was the first country in the world to abolish slavery. And it was the reason why that's so big is because we see more slavery today than it was at a transatlantic slave trade. And black people are enslaving other black people. Asian people enslaving other Asian people. But this was a focus on Britain being an evil country, a racist country. This one man talks a lot of waffle. I think it's complete and utter waffle. He's saying that we have an airbrushed image of what Britain actually did throughout the British Empire. We were only ever taught about the abolition of slavery. And I just remember, first and foremost, we weren't only ever taught about abolition. In fact, most black people in Britain can recall sitting in history lessons where we all had to watch Roots. Every single one of us that had most of us pretty much had no roots to this, by the way. Black British people, we are typically first, second and third gen immigrants. We only saw the mass immigration of black people to Britain after the end of the Second World War. We don't actually have this huge extensive history in Britain. So a lot of us are just watching these movies about slavery in these history classes, and we're like, we have no attachment to it. I know I was East African. I know loads of other people who are black that had no ties to the slave trade. It's only really the Windrush generation and the Jamaicans that could have been awkward about that type of movie. But really and truly, most black people were not involved in the slave trade. Most black people living in Britain were not, our ancestors were not present. These are completely outdated complaints that we have about the British Empire that simply do not translate into the 21st century. Sorry, am I speaking too fast again? I told you, I'm trying to slow it down, but whenever I get excited, I just speed it up. So he said it's airbrushed. We don't actually learn enough. So he's created this false victimhood. He's created this false injustice. And whenever you create a false injustice, it creates, as a result of that, or it produces this desire to then resolve that injustice. And we need to fight against something, except there's absolutely nothing to fight for. You invented the injustice. And it's why I have a similar criticism about Black History Month. You invent the injustice that we don't learn enough about Black history, which I don't think it's an injustice considering in Britain we focus on British history and Black people don't really have a strong presence throughout the course of British history. And then now we have to resolve this injustice by an entire month dedicated to learning about us. What? And you have to sit in lessons where what guilty white teachers are like, today, Hannah, we're going to learn about you. Because I think it's really important that we learn about you today. And I'm just there like, oh my gosh, please leave me alone. Please leave me alone. They talk about the fact that we finished paying the compensation for, that was given to slave owners in order to free the slaves in around 1833. Just in 2015, which is true. We just finished paying off. It was around £20 million that was given to slave owners in order to abolish the slave trade. I just remember thinking, although it might be bad that we just finished paying it off, do you see how it surfaces those tensions in the 21st century quite unnecessarily and quite unproductively? Because what are we supposed to do about that? What are we supposed to do about the fact that we just finished paying off the loan in 2015? Are we supposed to give it back? Are you suggesting that we repay that? Are you insinuating that we should do some type of reparation? Because reparations are completely impractical, illogical, and unnecessary. Because, oh my goodness, how would this even work? How would reparations even work? Who would you give back to? Who would you take the money from, and to whom would you give it back to? How does this work? Because according to UCL, they did a study. You can trace maybe 10 to 20% of rich people in Britain to slave owners. And then you have to take into account that most black people in Britain were not in any way linked to the slave trade. And it was only the Windrush generation. Most black British people have no ties to slavery. This is an entire different category of black that lives in Britain. We need to stop acting like we descended from slaves. I still have my last name. I descended from East Africa, Eritrea, Ethiopia. That's where I'm from. Most black people will tell you the same thing. We have no connections to slavery. It's only really the Jamaicans or the Windrush generation that came from the West Indies in the in the 1940s, 1950s. So how is this going to work? And also, who would you take it from, in the sense that would you take it from white people, or would you take it from the black people that sold out their own black people to the white people? Because what they don't tell you about the British Empire, and yes, it is airbrushed in the sense that this man says it airbrushed, we airbrushed the history. We airbrushed the history in the sense that we were not taught that it was actually black people that sold out their own people to the Europeans. Are we going to take from the white people and are we going to give it to the black people? Or are we going to take from the black people and give it to the black people? How are reparations going to work? Look at this article. I think this is so important. You should see this. My Nigerian great-grandfather sold slaves. And here it says, if you scroll down to the article, I'm going to link it below so you can take a look yourself. He says, this is how slaves were traded in Africa. So European buyers tended to remain on the coast. African sellers brought slaves from the interior on foot. Journeys could be as long as 485 kilometers. 2 captives were typically chained together at the ankle. Columns of the captives were tied together by ropes around their necks, and 10 to 15% of captives died on the way. They only tell you about the ones that died by being tossed over on the ship, the treacherous journey across the transatlantic. No, they don't tell you about the black slaves that died along the way to the borders because their black masters, their black slave masters, were dragging them along and selling them to the Europeans. Who would you give these reparations to? So why? They're bringing this whole conversation up about race and compensation because they are trying to bring the same thing in America to Britain. And we are not going to let that happen on the Free Thinker Cast. You need to make sure that you share this video. You need to make sure that you like this video. You need to make sure that you comment on this video so we can boost this video in the algorithm and send it to the people that need to see it. They need to see this. They don't want you to know this. They don't want you to know this. So you have to know it. Okay? And then straight after berating Britain for being this awful racist country, they then show this image of this picture of young white men and black men waving the British flag. And I'm just thinking, that's very interesting. How you could just go from saying Britain is so evil and racist in the attempt to kind of make it look like it's racist today, and then show us a more recent image of people perfectly integrating, people perfectly smiling while waving the British flag. How is that possible in a country that can formerly enslave black people to now be waving the British flag, celebrating the Royal Jubilee? It is because the British Empire back then is not the British Empire now. Stop making outdated complaints about Britain. It is not applicable to the 21st century. Finally, we see positive things that are being said about Meghan. Now the British press is embracing Harry and Meghan, embracing their relationship, and you see streets of people flooded, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, everybody's so excited to see them. And I'm just thinking, well, what a change of tune. It's like you've been whining about Britain for the first 2 episodes, and now we're seeing the positive press. It took us 3 episodes, but we got there in the end. We finally arrived where People are up to that Meghan and Harry are finally acknowledging the positive reception that they received when Meghan arrived from America. And I don't know if he's noticed this, but it's also the same time that he gets his head out of the Daily Mail and he gets his head out of the tabloids and steps into the real world, walks across the street, and they do a royal walkabout where they literally just, you've seen a royal walkabout? They go and they walk about. That's all they do. They just walk about and they shake people's hands and they smile and they smile and wave. How many OG Freethinker cast supporters know about that? They smile and wave. She was doing it. She was doing it. Right? And then they fall into the bad press again. Right? Despite the fact that most people adore them, most people own them, they go back into the press coverage. What are they saying about Meghan's mum? What are they saying about Meghan's dad? How are they covering it? And then they attempt to draw the difference and they try to draw the comparison between the press coverage of her mother and her father in a way that draws her mother to be evil and horrible. Yeah, they attempt to draw her mother in a way that's evil and horrible. The press covered my mother to be poor and dirt poor, whereas my father was just figuring things out and he was okay. They kind of try to just pick the image that his father was innocent and the mother was evil and poor and horrible or something like that, because somehow they fall under the same connotations. Don't ask me, ask Meghan. To which I remember thinking, have you forgotten what they said about your father? They said the most horrible thing. He's estranged father. He's not welcome to the wedding. He was uninvited. Or, I don't know, like there were so many articles attacking him because of his weight. They remember the articles saying he got so much negative press. This man got so much negative press. And it's strange because she acknowledges that there was a difference in the way her mother was covered and her father was covered in the beginning. But then she refuses to acknowledge in the end, they actually put into the docuseries, they put into this episode, closer to the end, all the bad press he was receiving. The images of him doing his exercise. They're making fun of his weight. They made so much fun of this man's weight. So much fun. The press loved it to make him just this gluttonous man, this bad. They tried to make him look like the estranged father that she wanted to be dissociated from because it was bad for her image. That's what they were doing to him as well. But once again, you invent the injustice and then you resolve the injustice by doing what? I don't actually know I don't know. What did she do? She fabricated injustice, and then we could talk about how this isn't it, and then we can talk about how we need to fix it. Subconscious bias. That's it. Shedding for the wedding. they literally he's doing his workout, he's trying to get ready for the wedding, and look at them snarky captions they have. So also in this episode, Harry also decides to filter through his unconscious bias. He talks about how he's still working through his unconscious bias. You see how pervasive critical race theory is? Unconscious bias being the notion that white people are inherently racist and inherently evil. He has embraced this theory. This is why it's so important to teach critical race theory as a theory. If you want to teach it, we have literally no problem with you if you want to teach it as a theory, but it's not being taught as a theory, it's being taught as fact. And it is so utterly pervasive. It has destroyed this royal family. He thinks he's racist. I'm thinking, Harry, okay, I don't know. He speaks a lot about identifying the unconscious bias within. You have to identify the unconscious bias within and you still have to sort through it. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe he and his family members were able to find this unconscious bias and discover and identify this unconscious bias when they were touring some 50 members in the Commonwealth. Yeah, 56 independent and equal countries of African nations. Maybe you were able to discover your unconscious bias when you were shaking hands with all of these African people in Zimbabwe. Literally, not Zimbabwe, it was Botswana. He talks a lot about his love for Botswana in episode 1. And this is before they went public. He loved Botswana. He loved spending time with African people. Where is his unconscious bias? Because the last time I checked, people who have unconscious bias for black people don't stay in Botswana and actually, reportedly, wanted to live there in Botswana. I don't know about you, but racist people don't want to take up residence in a predominantly black country. So where is this unconscious bias that you're filtering through? What is critical race theory doing to you, Harry? It's destroyed you. What about your other family members? Your grandmother that toured the Commonwealth for 70 years. Did she have unconscious bias when she was going and shaking hands with all these black people? Where is this unconscious bias? Maybe somewhere in these nations that you travelled and all across the world, you'll be able to find it. But no, you have to look within. You have to look inside. You're looking for a ghost. People don't have faith in God anymore. They have faith in oppression. Everything is oppression. Christianity is a minority in Britain now, 40-something%. And it's because people have faith in this oppression. It's faith that everyone's racist. You have to have a lot of faith for no evidence to exist whatsoever that somebody's a racist, for you to tour the entire Commonwealth, African nations. You want to take up residence in Botswana, reportedly. Loves African people. Stays there shaking hands with black people, holding black babies. But you believe somehow you have a problem with black people. You have faith. You have most Christians don't even have faith to recover from the common cold, but you have faith that you're racist despite all evidence to the contrary. Boy, we miss you, Harry. Just come back. Just come back. Harry, please. Stop this now. And this curly-haired girl. Oh, I got something to say about this girl. She has really good curls, but that's not the point. The point is, she said something really silly. She basically said that this Commonwealth, despite the fact that it is an amicable alliance between member states, it is entirely a voluntary association. People are voluntarily signing up to be members of the Commonwealth. She said this is the Empire 2.0. Empire 2.0? What are you talking about, curly-haired girl? With really nice curls. That's not the point. I'm not talking about your curls. I'm talking about the silly, twisted thinking. Empire. I want to know what part of this Empire 2.0 is where the slaves sign up to be members of the organisation. I didn't know that the slaves sign up to just compete in sports, in competitive sports with one another at the Commonwealth Games. What Empire 2.0 exists where the slaves all trade with one another on a voluntary contractual basis? What part of Empire 2.0 is the Commonwealth that actually promotes democracy, oversees 160 different elections over the course of 60, 70 years? Let me double check. 160 elections in 40 countries since 1980 to promote democracy, to promote freedom. What Empire 2.0 are you talking about? Because I'm confused and I would like to know. Building, supporting, strengthening legal systems and good governance in our member countries is a key aim of the Commonwealth. But she said the Commonwealth is the Empire 2.0. Dumbest documentary I've ever seen in my life. And I love documentaries. I am a documentary gal, docu-series gal. Not gonna lie, I don't like series in movies and things, but docu-series are my favourite because I like how informative they are. But I learned nothing. I was fact-checking everything. I kept pausing it because they just don't tell the truth. Race baiters. They pulled in loads of race baiters to fuel this narrative that simply doesn't compute. Right? And then after they talk about the empire and colonialism and slavery, they somehow link it to Stephen Lawrence. I said, okay, the segue was evil, horrible, racist empire. Stephen Lawrence, a black man that was jumped by white men in a racially motivated attack that was evil and horrible. Happened in 1993, but it was definitely we don't see this as a regular occurrence. It was an isolated incident of evil people did an evil act, and they're using this instance in 1993. This is how desperate they are to look for racism. First, they went all the way back to the British Empire, outdated complaints. This is the 21st century. And now 1993, you couldn't get maybe something from 2000 and maybe 17. Recent census data came out. I mean, the recent census data is more recent than this attack. To make it appear as if Britain is awful and evil and racist, every white person was disgusted at the way that man was murdered because of his ethnicity. Nobody in this country condoned the attacks. It was awful. But no, they needed something. They needed some ammunition. They're desperately milking the cow of racism. They milk and milk and milk and milk and milk. There's no milk left. Then they go to a goat because they already milked the cow. Now they're going to get goat's milk. And they milk and milk and milk and milk. And now they are lactose intolerant. You know, apparently like 3/4 of the world is lactose intolerant. Let me just double check that. Okay, not 3/4, 68%. But that's the first thing that came up. So there could be more research into it than that. Loads of people in this world are lactose intolerant, okay? A significant majority lactose intolerant. Not Meghan and Harry because they keep milking this cow. Everything's racist. No. The entire country is not racist. There are a select few people that are. A lot of the articles they even use, as we established in episode 1, were not even racist. But there are examples of racism, and Stephen Lawrence's incredible example to use, a valid example to use, except it is not prevalent in this country. So stop begging it. Stop forcing it. Stop forcing it. I haven't said that in a while. Stop forcing it. Stop. Okay, that's it. So that is my episode 3 review done and dusted. If you like this episode, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Comment your ideas down below. Give this video a big thumbs up. I think I already said that. Hang on a minute. Yes, make sure you subscribe to this channel, and the next 3 episodes are dropping tomorrow. And I will see you shortly. I'm about to upload another video about Gozi Fulani, so make sure you are subscribed because I'm not done with her. I have a lot to say.